My name is Clara Jones. I'm 42 years old and work as a marketing consultant at a tech company. I live with my husband Daniel and my mother-in-law Judith. Daniel and I met 8 years ago at a work event. Back then, I focused mostly on my career and didn't think much about love. But Daniel changed my mind. He was charming and kind, and soon we got married. At first, everything seemed perfect. We bought a small house in the suburbs and planned to start a family. Judith moved in with us after the wedding because Daniel didn't want her to live alone after his father's death. I thought it was a good idea at the time, and Judith didn't bother me much. But over time, things began to change, and I didn't notice how bad it was getting. Daniel worked long hours and often came home late. This left me alone with Judith most of the time. She started making small comments that made me feel like I wasn't good enough. "Clara, don't you think lighter curtains would look better in the living room? Dark colors make the space feel so gloomy," she'd say, smiling as if she was being helpful. But her words always felt like a criticism. I tried to keep the peace because I knew how much Daniel loved his mom. I told myself it was a small price to pay for a happy marriage. But soon, Judith started taking over more and more. She moved furniture around without asking, and even redecorated Daniel's office. When I asked her to stop, she'd say, "I'm just helping, Clara. You're so busy with work. Someone has to make the house feel like a home." Daniel didn't see it as a problem and told me not to overthink it. One day, after a hard day at work, I found Judith cooking dinner. She said, "You're late again. It's a good thing I'm here to make sure Daniel has a proper meal." Her words hurt, but I bit my tongue and thanked her. As time went on, Judith's control over our household grew stronger. She started making decisions without consulting me, and Daniel didn't seem to notice. When I brought it up, he'd say, "Mom's just trying to help. Don't take it the wrong way." I felt like I was losing my place in my own home. The turning point came during a family trip to the lake. Judith insisted on going, and I hoped it would be a chance to relax. Instead, she took up all of Daniel's attention, leaving me feeling left out. That night, as Daniel slept, I lay awake, realizing how unhappy I'd become. Something had to change. I decided to set boundaries. I politely told Judith that some decisions should be made by Daniel and me as a couple. She didn't take it well. Her friendly tone turned cold and she snapped, "I'm just doing what's best for my son. If you cared about him, you'd understand." Daniel avoided taking sides, which only made things worse. Feeling isolated, I confided in my best friend Lisa. Over coffee, I shared everything. Lisa listened and said, "This isn't just about Judith. Daniel needs to support you. You can't do this alone." She was right. That evening, I talked to Daniel. I explained how Judith's behavior was affecting me and our marriage. At first, he defended her, but as I shared specific examples, he started to see my side. "I didn't realize it was this bad," he said. "I'm sorry, Clara. I'll talk to her." For the first time, I felt hopeful. Daniel confronted Judith, and she was furious. She accused me of trying to come between her and her son. But Daniel stayed firm. He told her we needed space to make our marriage work. Slowly, Judith started to back off. Even though things improved, I couldn't shake the feeling that Judith was planning something. One evening during dinner, she said, "I ran into an old friend today. She said Daniel seems so different now, not as lively as he used to be." Her words were meant to hurt, but I stayed calm and replied, "Daniel and I have grown together. I'm proud of the life we've built." Judith didn't say anything more, but her eyes narrowed. The final straw came when I came home early one day and found Judith going through my desk. Startled, she quickly said, "Oh, I was just looking for a pen." But my personal papers were scattered everywhere. I confronted her, and she didn't deny it. Instead, she said, "I was making sure there's nothing harmful to my son. You've already taken so much from him." I was furious and told her this had to stop. When Daniel came home, I told him everything. To my surprise, he took my side immediately. "Mom, this is not okay," he said. "You need to respect Clara and our marriage. If you can't, we might need to reconsider living together." Judith was shocked. She became quieter over the next few weeks and eventually announced she was moving to her sister's house in another state. As she packed, I felt both relief and sadness. Even with everything that happened, she was still Daniel's mother, and I wished things could have been different. With Judith gone, Daniel and I focused on rebuilding our relationship. We spent more time together and worked on making our home a happy place. It wasn't easy, but we were determined to make it work. However, moving forward wasn't as simple as I had hoped. Judith's absence left an emptiness in Daniel that I hadn't anticipated. While he supported me during her departure, he occasionally seemed lost, as if grappling with guilt for asking his mother to leave. I tried to be patient, giving him space to process his emotions. At the same time, I worked hard to rebuild my own sense of security. Lisa, my best friend, suggested that Daniel and I take up an activity together to strengthen our bond. We decided to start hiking on weekends. It gave us a chance to talk openly without the distractions of home. As we navigated winding trails and admired breathtaking views, we began to reconnect in ways I didn't think were possible. One afternoon, during a particularly challenging hike, Daniel stopped and turned to me. "Clara, I've been thinking," he said, his voice steady but serious. "I want us to focus on us now. No more letting outside influences dictate our lives." His words filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. We both knew that rebuilding wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it felt like we were truly a team. The changes in our household didn't go unnoticed. Judith's occasional phone calls to Daniel became fewer and more cordial. She no longer tried to interfere in our lives, though I could sense she still held some resentment toward me. Despite this, I chose to let go of any lingering bitterness. I reminded myself that holding on to anger would only weigh me down. Our weekends soon became filled with more than just hiking. We started hosting small dinner parties with friends, something we hadn't done in years. Our home, which once felt tense and unwelcoming, was now filled with laughter and warmth. Even Lisa commented on how different the atmosphere felt. "It's like a completely new space," she said during one visit. Daniel's growth during this period amazed me. He began to take on more responsibilities around the house, something Judith had always shielded him from. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to share a partnership. Watching him learn and adapt made me fall in love with him all over again. As the months passed, I found myself reflecting on everything we'd been through. Judith's influence, while difficult to navigate, had ultimately taught me the importance of standing firm in my convictions. More importantly, it showed me the strength of our marriage. We had weathered a storm and come out stronger on the other side. One day, as I was tidying up, I came across an old photo of Daniel and me from our first year of marriage. We looked so young and carefree, completely unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. I smiled, realizing how far we'd come. Our journey hadn't been perfect, but it was ours, and in the end, that's all that mattered. Looking ahead, I felt optimistic about our future. Daniel and I had learned to communicate better, to prioritize each other, and to cherish the life we were building together. Judith's departure marked the end of one chapter, but it also opened the door to a new beginning filled with hope, love, and endless